Hey everybody, Arnaldo Woffman here with Compushow Video Manuals. Today I want to talk to you about hex lights, or even if it's just an RGBW, RGB amber, and having different control of those colors when you only have one dimmer and one fader. How is that, or one shutter? How is that going to work? Because if I have, let's say, the lights on red, and I wanted to add black light, and I wanted the red to strobe, but not the black lights, how am I going to be able to do that without messing everything up? There's a very easy way of doing it, and we're going to utilize a couple of things, especially the virtual dimmers that Compushow has. So first of all, the way that I have my setup done is all my colors are actually controlled via the master page, right? You'll see all the different color switches. There's some other switches here. And then the page for the individual page for each type of flood, because I have multiple types of floods, that's just for behind the scenes stuff. So I'm going to kind of give you, both ways of doing it and kind of go from there. First, let's look at our black lights. First thing we're going to do is let's go ahead and edit it for a second. Now, on the hex, this is the Ultra Hex 3, but the ADJ 5 and 12P have the exact same DMX channels. I believe that the Elation 6 Par has a channel mode as well, like this. But I'm just going to keep red, green, blue, white, and amber disabled because we don't want to control. And the shutter is going to be disabled. Now, the reason the shutter is going to be disabled is because we have the default at 0, which is open. And then we're going to keep the UV to be controlled with the dimmer, right? So max and min, or even just standard dimmer option. And then we're going to have the dimmer solid on. So this means as I move my MIDI-con dimmer up and down, or the dimmer on the individual scene, it only moves this. It does not move the dimmer. We want the dimmer to be solid on. Now, because what happens in this page overrides the master, I do not need to set this to be always takes priority. If you are doing this everything on one page, you want to set this to always takes priority. So just giving you a heads up on that. Your effects may be slightly different because they're on two different kinds of pages, but you should be all good. The other thing you want to do is, we're just going to go ahead and go into settings. You want to make sure that on your switch, it has to be a switch, not a scene, by the way, that the switch is always on. So this basically means that as I move my fader, or my, what's it called, UV, I can dim it up and down, no matter what's happening with anything else, okay? So we've got that done. Yay. Now, this also means that the dimmer channel on these lights are always on. So does that mean that anytime I turn an RGB value, this would be on? Well, not always. Let's take a look. So we're going to go to the master page where I made a color, or we can even go here where there's a color effects, okay? We're just going to open that up. You'll see the color effects there. And this one here is actually kind of screwy, so because I haven't edited this one. So let's actually go to the master page. And I heavily recommend you do this the same way I'm doing it. It just makes things so much easier. So we're going to go edit one of our banks right over here. We're going to grab the hex. Let's see where we're at. There's the 5P right there. So what do we have on the 5P? Well, we've got red, green, blue. Obviously, we've got those activated, selected. Amber, I have it on a fader because I actually don't use amber a lot unless it's for uplighting. So the way that I program mine is I program that I can add amber separately to any one of these scenes as I need it to be. Otherwise, it's off. So if I move the MIDI-con fader up, it'll add a little bit of amber to that. Yay. Okay, now the dimmer is off. Why is the dimmer off? Because it was on for the UV channel. Okay, so how do I dim this scene up and down? Well, I'm going to rock your world for a second. Even though the dimmer is disabled, we know the dimmer is still on because the UV channel says, hey, keep the dimmer on and do not dim it. Okay, meaning because it's solid on, this little green guy right here, you cannot dim it at all. But Compushow has a virtual dimmer, and it's already built in. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my fixtures here so we can see them. Let's grab, I believe, these are the 5Ps right here, okay? We're going to go to this one right here. And you see this dimmer? This dims the value of the RGB faders or RGB amber, whatever the case may be. Any of those faders, it dims it down without touching the dimmer. So the dimmer would actually be a completely separate channel. So I could actually go here, even though this controls that, it doesn't dim that down at all. Why? Because that dimmer is always on. If you don't have this dimmer solid on, it will dim this one. So you want it solid on. So basically Compushow sees, ooh, there's no dimmer that I can dim, so now I'm going to use a virtual dimmer. Okay, I hope that makes sense, and that's really going to help you with some advanced programming and busking much later on. But what about the strobes? Okay, so here's where it gets tricky, right? You really can't make a white strobe because if you have your shutter, let's go back over here, right? If you have this shutter on, it's going to make everything strobe. So I have it that I have a strobe for my colors. And if my colors strobe, well, the UV light's going to strobe. Not the end of the world, okay? So, and I'll show you that in just a second. So basically, if I have this shutter move, everything is going to strobe. So how do you make a strobe without changing the shutter channel? Well, very easy. Let's open this up. I'm going to rock your world for a second, okay? We're not even going to set anything with time or anything like that as far as, max min for your strobe channel or anything. What we're going to do is we're going to activate our white in this step scene. We're going to keep our dimmer solid on. And even though it's already on the UV, I just do this here on anyways in case for any reason my UV channel ever got disabled. And we have the shutter, again, not touched at all because default is on. If in your light the default is not on or 0 is not on, just make sure that it is on to whatever it may be. So now we're going to create 2 steps and we're going to do a hold time of 1/4 of a second. Okay? So there it is. Strobe on or off. Now, is this as fast as the shutter can get? No, but it's a realistic enough strobe. It's not going to be like one of those super fast LED strobes that looks like it's solid, but to be honest with you, I never use that anyways. But here's the advantage of that, okay? If you have multiple lights in different options or different, what's it called, channels, DMX channels, then when you hit the strobe and you hit your phasing, now the strobe is going to be all stagnant, which looks really cool. You can speed it up, you can slow it down. Obviously, it doesn't show it here. I don't know why, but the fixtures page just doesn't want to show it. And you can, of course, you have to tell your speed and you have your dimmer, okay? But again, the dimmer channel is solid on. So what this means is that, again, it's using that dimmer option to make it strobe and to, or not make it strobe, sorry, to change the fader of your strobe or the intensity of your strobe, but it's not going to change your colors at all. So I'm going to go ahead and take this guy. I'm going to bring it down quite a bit. We're actually just going to have red. Oops, let me turn this back on because then I'm going to wonder why it was dimmed all the way down. So we're going to take red. We're going to dim it down like that. I don't know if the white shows it on here. It may show it for 1. There it goes. Again, it's not saying that these two aren't working because these are all on the same DMX address. It's just the way that it's rendering on parallels right now. But see right there, I can dim the strobe down. I can bring it up. So that's worked out really, really well for me, okay? And you can turn it on or off, easy. I also have a solid white on. And if I make this strobe, my color strobe, so there's a strobe function right there. Oops, I guess that doesn't, for some reason, it doesn't show it on there. But rest assured, there is a strobe function on here. I'm going to show you how that's set. That strobe function is using the shutter channel. So that is going to make everything strobe. If I have any white light or white LED on, amber, UV, that's going to make everything strobe. I'm okay with that. If I have color strobing, then the UV is going to strobe. If you want to make color strobes and have like a UV or white solid to create a really cool effect, then just start creating your colors and have them where they turn on and off just like we did with this guy over here. So that was pretty easy there. And then, how you map it on the MIDI-Con is, or your, what's it called? Your MIDI controller, whatever the case may be, is completely up to you. Now, the same thing with black lights. If you want to make a black light strobe, all you got to do is, we'll just duplicate it here. And we're going to call it UV strobe. All right, so we've got that. And then we're just going to have another one over here. Ah, crap, did not mean to do that. I do this every time, sorry. No, we do not need to link all of them. There we go. And now what we're going to do is we're going to have just on, and then off. And now we're going to change the time, all the steps, to a fourth of a second, or 0.04 seconds, whatever you want to call it. Now it's still showing it as white, even though it's obviously UV. Again, it's just the way that this renders it. And we want to make sure the switch is not always on. I want to be able to turn it on or off. So again, let's pretend that little white light is actually the UV, but I can still dim it down, even though it's a strobe, or not, even though it's not set to dim. So that virtual dimmer really comes in handy, and that's a really nice Compushow feature that I'm a fan of. So essentially, I have an RGB, amber, UV, white LED fixture, a hex fixture, and I can control my colors. I can dim my colors separately of my UVs. Oops, that's speed. So I can dim them separately of the UVs. I can add some white. I can dim that down. I can make that white strobe. I can add my black lights. I can bring them all the way up, bring them back down. I can make that strobe. And I can do the same thing, of course, with amber. But remember, to make your individual color programs flash or strobe, the easiest way is to use that strobe channel. But that strobe channel, the shutter channel, will override these as well. And if you want to make your colors strobe without making everything else strobe, just your RGB, then you need to make a program that turns them on and off. But then making a color chase that does that is going to be slightly difficult. So again, it's just, you got to play with that a little bit. But this gives you a lot more options that you would be able to normally do without. So I really hope that helps you guys out. This has been one of my biggest tricks of really squeezing out every bit of possibility from a hex fixture. Thank you guys so much for watching. Good night, and God bless.